Hello, hello. This is so fun. Welcome to the first Ask Me Anything live. I guess that's what all the cool people are doing these days. And so you brought in such great questions. And of course, I welcome other questions. If you have them, you're welcome to type them in here. And if I see one of them, I'll grab it and go with the live questions. But I have a whole list of really good questions that you've submitted to me. And I might just have to do this again because I'm never going to get through all these questions. I was looking at them thinking, oh my goodness, I could talk about this one question for the whole half an hour, but I won't do that. I'll try to keep myself on task and keep myself moving and get through as many of the questions as possible. But let's start with the most important pressing question. How often do I wash my hair? Jamie, thank you for asking that. I'm sure everybody's wondering. The answer is as infrequently as possible, which usually comes out to about twice a week. But the more important question on that is, when's the last time I got my hair done? Oh my goodness. Please tell me in the comments if anybody else has not gotten their hair done since coronavirus came into our lives. Because here in San Francisco, they're not even open yet. So I have not even had the chance to go in there. I'm looking like, as Megan would say, a little bit of a fire hazard down here, broken ends, that my hairstylist says I'm still blonde naturally, but I'm a little suspicious. It's looking like dark blonde, and I'm certainly getting some special strands of glitter that I can see that I don't always see. So welcome to the new way of doing life, right? Which leads into the next question, which is, what does it feel like to come out with a book during a pandemic year? Kristen, great question. And yeah, that I can just kind of pick up that thread that I was saying earlier. It's so funny because this is the time where I'm supposed to be doing my headshots for the book and doing all these promotional videos and doing all this, being visible. And so while I'm out here being more visible, it's also the time where I'm least excited about being visible. And so we've just kind of had to swallow all of that and just be like, alrighty, we're just showing up as is for posterity's sake. All the book trailer video and all that stuff just didn't happen, obviously. And I had, which also means I had to do all my own video shooting and all that stuff. In the past, I've had amazing friends and talented professionals take my video for my book trailer and all that kind of stuff. And this time it was like me in my apartment. So that's another thing. Pandemic. It was really awkward. You remember back to middle of March and the confusion and the panic. And there were several weeks there you wouldn't dare write an email to somebody without starting with hope everyone's well in your family. I hope you're okay. I mean, it was just a really big, hard time. And guess what phase of book launch I was in that month? Asking for endorsements. It was less than ideal, where you're writing people that you really respect and admire and just being like, hope everybody in your life is still alive. Hey, do you want to read my book? It was awkward, to say the least. And amazing how many of them said yes and came through, and I've got some amazing endorsements, of which I'm so grateful and will be super thankful for. But yeah, not ideal timing. The pandemic has done that weird thing where on the one hand, it makes this feel like there's more important things going on in the world than my book. And on the other hand, it also did away with all my speaking appointments. So really, I didn't have much else going on besides my book. And in many ways, it's interestingly kind of opened up space for the reason I wrote this book. So many of you have journeyed with me for a really long while, and you'll remember it was back in, I remember in 2011, I think, writing a blog about how come nobody's talking about loneliness? And I remember feeling like I was just this person out in the desert being like, hello, hello, our friendships matter. And that feeling you feel, that's wanting more connection. And so fast forward, I mean, just in the last 2 years, even, we've seen so much more research, so much more acceptance, so many more voices, so many more experts, like just a gathering up and a force of so many of us saying, hey, this really matters, and us finding each other and our voices getting amplified. But then nothing like a pandemic to isolate all of us and in some ways accelerate the whole process a little bit more. Like now it's not, I don't have to convince anyone they're lonely, and there's less shame and there's less stigma around it, right? Like now it's a lot more of like, of course we're all lonely, and it's not because it's our fault. It's like we are craving more connection. And so in many ways, I've been grateful for like the acceleration that the pandemic has done, where it's kind of opened us up to saying, yeah, I don't need to feel shame around this. I just need to say I miss people. I want to be connected. It's also really helped us to see like kind of an assessment, if you will, of our relationships, where I know I've heard from some of you like, wow, I think what I had before was a social life. Like I was really busy, but I wasn't really connected, and nothing like having all the events removed to suddenly kind of be like, oh yeah, who are the people that I'm relying on to share my heart with and to be close to? So that's a powerful aha. And a lot of us are having more just clarity around, you know, what values do we each want to live by going forward? What do we want to, kind of what friendships are important to us to maintain, and what are we willing to maintain them? And it's forced us to also do more sharing, I think, as opposed to like, we can't just rely on getting together for activities all the time. So friends that would have just simply done an activity together, now suddenly our only option was like a Zoom or something where it required more connection and conversation. I think it also opened us up to be a little bit more vulnerable. I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment. Like, tell me how your friendships have been impacted. I mean, we certainly can see the negative, but is there positive too to the pandemic? And I know the question was about like book publishing, but it's hard for me to talk about like the book coming out and kind of our readiness for it and our openness to the conversation without talking about how that pandemic has affected the topic, the subject of our connection and of our loneliness. And I think that's really important to kind of just name. And I'd say one of the hardest things, just grieving coming out with a book during a pandemic is the loss of being able to go on like the proverbial book tour. I was so looking forward to traveling this fall and talking about this and signing books and seeing your faces and going into corporations and talking about why this matters and helping facilitate those connections. So that was hard to let go of and grieve. And on the flip side of that, I can still do that virtually, and we're trying to make those switches and make that opportunity available. And it's allowed for so many of you. I mean, I've had so much more support, so many more people coming on and talking about my book and my work and helping support me. And so it's also kind of opened up this, like, let's help each other and support each other. And that is so powerful. So there's some ramblings on book publishing during a pandemic. And I will say that because I can't go on book tour, mark your calendar, because the night before my book launch, so the book comes out August 18, and the night before, on August 17, it's a Monday night, I'm going to do a live book launch, a very long live book launch that I'm planning out and I'm super excited about. Going to be over on Facebook Live, 3 hours. You don't have to be there for all 3 hours, but every 15 minutes, I'm going to be bringing on a different guest, people who were mentioned in my book and bring them on, some people who endorse the book and bring them on, some of my own work friends. So it'll be a fun party, and would love to have you join any portion of that. So who's in? Mark your calendar and tell me who I'm going to see there. So that would be awesome. And I love seeing your comments, Colleen. Since the pandemic, I have time now for myself, but still feel a little guilty about having that time. Isn't guilt a weird thing? I'm telling you what, it is such an ongoing thing, but no guilt. It's just recognizing, I think, for all of us, like how much alone time do I need and how much connection time do I need? And just a reminder that there's such a difference between alone and lonely, right? And that's really powerful to have the alone time, I think, for us to do a better job of maybe going, oh, that's the difference in my body. That's how it feels different. Being alone is not at all the same as being lonely, but I think so many of us haven't had enough alone time to know the difference. So it's one of the other powerful things that has happened during this time is for us to start kind of checking in with ourselves and being more comfortable, hopefully, with our alone time and being more in love with it. I think the more alone time we have, the more we're actually able to do more powerful connecting. Unfortunately, for most of us, it's like we have less alone time and less meaningful connection time, and most of our lives are made up of the stuff in the middle that's not really rejuvenating our bodies and also not really leaving us feeling connected. And so it's pretty powerful when we can say, okay, I'm doing a lot of talking, a lot of interacting, a lot of customer service, a lot of being around my team. But how much am I doing to really take care of myself with alone time? And how much am I doing to really make sure I'm getting that powerful connecting time? So yeah, a lot of ahas for all of us coming out of this, which is really, really beautiful. So let me see. The next question that I'm going to take is, this is a big one. Kristen asked what it's like to have written a diversity and inclusion book a year before the Black Lives Matter racial revolution. What learning can we take most from the book to move forward in this time? Yeah, so I wouldn't go and say this is a diversity and inclusion book per se. There's so many other people who do that so beautifully and so powerfully, and that is not my expertise completely. My expertise would be more on the inclusion piece of it for sure. It certainly comes up in the workplace stuff, and I write to it. And I will tell you that if my book weren't already laid out and designed, I'll talk about that. Some of you asked about the book process, and I'll share that in a minute. So the book process, like my book, interior book, got laid out in April. So that means that I couldn't make any more content changes. Even before that, we had to get locked into that and sign something saying I won't make any more changes. So yeah, if I had known that there was going to be a pandemic and a racial revolution, I would have written more to both of those. Fortunately, I do talk about remote working and diversity in my work, in my book, but I would have definitely covered them more. That's one of the hard things about being an author is that you just keep hearing things, reading more research, talking to more people, and you're like, ooh, I want to put that in my book. Yesterday, I just saw the book. Have you seen the book? It's The Survival of the Friendliest. That's a pretty amazing. I think it's Vanessa Woods and Brian Hare. I just saw came out with a book where they're talking about watching the evolution of species and saying that we got it wrong. It's not survival of the fittest. What we got wrong was defining the fittest. And we used to think that was strength and kind of the machoism. And in fact, fittest in the animal species and the plant species world is friendliness. It's those who were able to collaborate and to build relationships and to kind of have cross relationships with different species. And I mean, it's a fascinating read. And I was like, I want to put this in my book, but I can't. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard to just let it be. The book that's written when it was written would be a different book than if I wrote the book 6 months later, or if I wrote the book today. And that's just the life of every author, I think. It's just you have to be at some point done. And at some point they need to say, off to the presses, stand back, stay away. And I totally get that. But yeah, on the racial thing, I feel like our workplaces are one of the most powerful places for us to have these conversations. And our corporations have done an amazing job leading in so many ways, deciding what products to pull, who to show in advertising, what kind of a process for recruitment and promotions, and what kind of profiling we want, kind of representation on our boards. And so our corporations have helped move forward so much of what we need when it comes to diversity and inclusion and equality and social justice. And they're also a great, great place for all of us to practice building those relationships. One of the studies I saw is that 75% of white people don't have any close friends that are not white. And then, of course, of the other 25%, it's not necessarily a pretty picture to have like the one black friend, right? That is kind of the joke that we tell, and suddenly we think that makes us equal and good allies and everything. The truth of the matter is, we all need better relationships in diverse places and with diverse groups of people. I mean, that's how we fall in love with people. That's how we hear their real stories and feel more connected and want goodness for them. I truly want it because we love them and we know them. And I think about like one of the women who was talking to me, and she was talking about her experience being Black and showing up at a white friend invited her over for dinner and in her neighborhood, and she talked about how she needed her friend to open the front door before she'd get out of the Uber so that she would just know that she was safe, and like she didn't want to be seen, knocking on the door in a neighborhood that was primarily white. And I just thought, oh my word, like if you're not close enough to people to hear those stories and to realize their experiences and to want it to not be that way and to think through what could I be doing differently and better for my friends, it's really, really powerful. And so the workplace is one of the few places where for those of us who say, well, I want more diverse friends, how do I do that? The workplace is hopefully kind of like school was to us as kids, the place as adults where if they're doing their job right, they're hiring for diversity because they know that will benefit their products and services. And so there's a place there where we should be able to be meeting people who are different from us. If not, we need to be talking to the HR people at your company. But hopefully there's diversity there. But just having it there isn't enough if we don't actually like go and practice the 3 requirements of relationship with those people. And I'm speaking of race, but I'm thinking of gender, and I'm thinking about life experiences and sexual orientation and different limitations we all have and different strengths we have and personalities. I mean, there's so much diversity that we benefit from. And one of the studies I share in my book is that we have on record that people of color feel lonelier at work. And one of the areas where they score the highest are higher than white people is the worry that they will be alienated if stressful situations happened. So we might be friendly with them, but how reliable are we? And can they trust us to be that friend when it's challenging situations? I define friendship, as many of you know, as any relationship between any 2 people where both people feel seen in a safe and satisfying way. We both need to feel seen in a safe and satisfying way. And so if we hear from people of color saying, A, I don't feel seen, I feel like I have to hide myself, I feel like I have to show up differently, I can't bring my whole self to work, I don't feel like you're asking me or care about what I really think, I feel like you just want me in the room as a token person, but I don't really feel like you're like seeing me and wanting to know my experiences and my thoughts and my ideas. Like if they don't feel seen and they're telling us they are not feeling seen, and if it doesn't feel safe, which is what we're hearing from these studies, it doesn't feel reliable, they don't know if they can trust it, they don't know, like a lot of studies show that that sometimes we can be friendly, but if we're forced to decide or ally with somebody, that a lot of us will, especially like white people, or we would like ally with other white people over them perhaps. Really heartbreaking to look at the stories of like white women, especially, that we side with the people of our race over the people of our gender, with Black women. And there's a lot of stuff there that gets really messy. And so, but we're hearing from them. That's the important thing, is we're hearing their bravery and saying, I don't know that I can trust these relationships. I don't know that you would really, really, really be there for me. I don't know if I can trust you to be consistent. I don't know that you aren't going to just do this because it's trendy this month and it's like on theme this month, or only after a murder. Are you going to be there for me even when it's not trendy, and even when it's not the big thing, or even when it's not making news? And so we've got the vulnerability piece. They want to feel seen. We all do. It needs to feel safe. It needs to be consistent. We need to prove ourselves reliable, and it needs to feel good. And we're just hearing over and over that we're not leaving them feeling more empowered, more loved, more valued, and all of that. So at the end of the day, I think the takeaway here is that we need to hear them say that. We need to say, I want to be that. We need to figure out how to practice these 3 requirements in our lives everywhere, but certainly at work, where we and they are making our biggest contributions, where we're spending so much of our time, and it may be one of the few places where we actually can have enough consistency with people who are different from us, because so much in our other lives we tend to gravitate toward people who are like us. So the workplace, all that to say, the workplace is so significant, as an opportunity for us to really build the friendships that could change this. I really believe that. And so absolutely, we can't just get diversity. We have to deal with the inclusion piece. What bonds us together? What really brings us together? And we need to figure out ways where we can feel seen in a safe and satisfying way, all of us with our differences, with our uniqueness, and what makes us special. And so absolutely, this book is speaking to how to bond people, how to make relationships feel safe. And I am very excited about the opportunities and the impact this can have, not just on loneliness, but on racial revolution, on how we design our workplaces, remote working. I mean, the list goes on and on. So thank you for that question. That's one of the questions I could have done all 30 minutes, but I could keep going on that, but I will try to get through a few more questions. We have 10 more minutes. And as promised, Colleen asked the question, can you share the journey from thinking about a book to the actual fruition of holding a book in your hands? Yes, I can. So I can tell you the process that's in general for those of you who might be wanting to write a book. Tell me in the comments, are you thinking about writing a book? Or anybody who's written a book, tell me in the comments, and that will be fun. So there's a general process for anybody who's writing a book that stays more or less the same. And then I'll also share, this is my third book, so each one has followed that process but had a different timeline. I will share from this book's timeline, which was a little longer than the average timeline. If you're like a famous person writing a book that's like needs to get out before political season, they can rush the process. Or if you're an author who has worked with the same publisher and the same agent, and all you have to do is kind of go to them and say, I'm ready to work on my next book, the process can go faster. So there's certainly an acceleration of these processes available. Or if you're a full-time writer, which I am not, so I'm trying to write a book in the midst of everything else. So it's going to take a little bit longer for many of us for different reasons. But the process is have the idea, write a book proposal about it. And that book proposal is no small feat. It's actually harder in some ways than writing the book. It's a 40 to 60 page document. It's kind of like the business plan for a book. It's what agents and publishers use to decide if they want to buy your book. That proposal talks not just about like the overview of your book. It talks about you have to do a competitive analysis, like where would this fall on the bookshelf? Do we have bookshelves anymore at stores? I hope so. But what other books on the page would be under this category, and how is yours different? How is it similar and or different from those other books? You have to do a marketing plan of your platform, how you'll participate in the sharing of the book. You have to do a biography that's like, why me? Why am I qualified to write this book? You have to do 2 sample chapters. You have to do table of contents. So no small thing, that book proposal. So that takes a long time, because the book proposal is where you're actually working out your outline. It's where you're really thinking through and getting the research together. It's where you have to make your case. And so a ton of the work of writing the book goes into that book proposal. So that takes a very long time. And then of course, if you're not doing that full time and you're also trying to do training and speaking and all that stuff, it just means you're working on it when you can get to it. And then you turn in that proposal to your agent, and then your agent usually comes back and makes some changes and suggestions. And so you work on that. And then the agent starts shopping it around to publishers, and the publishers have some time to look at it, make decisions, make bids, and talk to you, have conversations. Then you end up deciding on one and deciding to agree. You sign the contract, you write the book. So it's always surprising to people that you write the book after the contract, and then you have time to write it, and then you submit it, and you usually submit it 10 to 12 months before the book comes out. And then that 10 to 12 months is when they are doing content editing, which is the first round. They come back and tell you, like, I don't like this chapter, we should do this differently, this thread doesn't follow through, this doesn't make sense. This book, I had very little of that. I was very happy. My editor, Sarah Kendrick at HarperCollins Leadership, did such a great job just basically saying, we want to keep this in the author's voice. I think you can strengthen something here. And other than that, let's take this chapter and make it a bonus chapter. And boom, bam, it was a pretty good process there. And then it goes through copy editing a couple of times and fact checking. And then they lay it out. And then you're working on the cover design. You're working on approving the copy of the back cover. You're getting your endorsements. And then 3 or 4 months before the book comes out, you go to marketing. And that's where then I was designing a friendship quiz for you to all take. So go take the friendship quiz that helps kind of share the book. I was putting together videos for managers and resources. And so even like after you've long written the book, you're like still writing and putting stuff together and developing stuff. So, and then we get the advanced copies, and those advanced copies go to advanced readers and to the media. And then you've got publicity that's starting to try to seed the media for you. And so like I'm doing podcast interviews like the book's coming out in 4 weeks, and I'm doing like 3 or 4 podcast interviews a week and media interviews and just basically planting seeds. I was complaining the other night about just how long the process is, like the delayed gratification. Like you're doing all this work and nobody sees it until like way out. And my friend was reminding me that I always talk about how delayed gratification is one of the building blocks of emotional intelligence. So I think I'm working on my emotional intelligence. I hope it's working. But yeah, it takes a long process, and then the book finally comes out. So for my process with this book, 3 years ago this month is when I had the idea of writing the book. The idea of, I was saying to a friend, how come businesses are never Googling friendship speaker? I was like so frustrated that the research is so compelling on why you want your employees to have friendships, and yet no company saw friendship as a legitimate issue. And I was just like, why? And that's when somebody's like, you just need to write the book and tell them that. And I was like, yes. But then of course it's like, a yes, but then you're sitting with it for a few months, and then you start writing the proposal, and it's a long process. So 3 years ago, last 3 summers ago, I said, I'm going to do that. That'll be my next book. And I didn't have the time yet to do it. A year later, I had the book proposal done. We were shopping it around. Last year, the book, I was writing it this time and turned it in September of this last year. And there is the process. Tell me, for those of you who are writing a book, was that process encouraging and helpful or discouraging? It's no joke. But it's going to be here soon. I was telling somebody the other day that I feel like what I describe as my friends who are like in their last month of pregnancy describe, that feeling where the nursery's done, the name is chosen, you're like, you've enjoyed the process, but you're just like, get this thing out of me. And I'm feeling that way now. I'm just like, let's just do this. Let's just get there. So 4 more weeks and we'll be there. All right, we have time for 1 or 2 questions if I go fast. One of the questions I loved was Krista asked, what is a TV show or movie that you think represents healthy friendships? And during the pandemic, I binge watched Sweet Magnolias on Netflix, and these 3 women get together in a southern town every week for margaritas and chips and guacamole, and I just was like, so jealous. I was just so jealous of just having friends over and hanging out on a weekly basis. I think it's what we all long for. And most of us are, even outside of a pandemic, are relying on phone and video and all this other stuff. But that movie, I love their diversity in their friendships. I love how they've got 2 of them have kids and 1 of them doesn't. One of them is Black and 2 of them are white, and they all have different careers, and how they just all show up and are going through life and divorces and dating. I just love any friendship show that shows our lives are never running parallel to each other. We are not the same people, and we have to figure out how to be in each other's lives. Another good one is Frankie and Grace. That one is so good. Again, like total opposites. You got the hippie and I don't know what you'd call Jane Fonda's role, just kind of the wealthy aristocrat woman at the beginning. And they're not the same people. And yet they show up and they have different politics, different beliefs, different ways of doing things, different values. And it shows again, I have a chapter in my book that says commonality is not the path of belonging. Our brains keep thinking we need to have all these things in common, but real friendship means we just need to feel seen in safe and satisfying ways. We need to have vulnerability, consistency, and positivity. And if our commonalities help us do one of those 3 things, then hallelujah, yes. But the commonalities in and of themselves do not produce bonding. And so a show like that is so powerful for reminding us of that at the end of the day, if they both feel like they're knowing each other, they're showing up for each other, and they feel loved by each other, that's what matters. And then, have any of you seen The Kaminsky Method? Yes, the Kaminsky Method is Michael Douglas, and it's two men. He's an acting coach, and the friend is this agent. And I thought it was a great show for men's friendship, especially. It's like older men, so it shows it's not the slapstick like we're buddies bromance. It shows men who are like we want to be close to each other. It's a little awkward, but it shows what loneliness looks like if they don't connect, and it shows like the reward of initiating and showing up, and there's tender and poignant moments, and it's really beautiful show for that. So what other shows do you have? Leave comments, tell me, because I want to watch more good friendship shows. What shows have you seen where you think you're modeling a good friendship? So those are 3 that I have, and I'm going to do one last question. I know that we're running out of time, but it's my Instagram live stream, so I can keep going. But 2 more minutes. Jamie asked, tell us the story of the red shoes. If Jaylene is watching this or comes on later and watches it, she can give you the details because she's the friend with the clear memory that I trust. So Jaylene, set me straight in the comments if you're seeing this later. But the way I remember it is several years ago, I bought a pair of red shoes, and I think it was my husband was with me, and I bought them for some big interview that I had at the time, or something that I was excited about and thought was going to happen. And I was like, I'm going to walk in there in red shoes. I don't think that thing ever happened. I'll have to think about what that was. But I ended up wearing them to a girls' weekend. I get together with these girls every year, and I wore them to an outing that we went on for dinner. And somebody made a comment like, love your red shoes. Somebody else was like, I don't think I could ever wear red shoes. Somebody else was like, oh, and I was probably like, everybody needs a pair of red shoes. And they like have this sassiness to them. We all need red shoes. Somehow in that conversation, somebody said we should all get red shoes. Somebody else said, it'd be so fun. We should all get red shoes this year and next year wear them. And so the next year, I don't remember when, somebody held us accountable to that a month before our get together and was like, I just bought my red shoes. Has everyone else got their red shoes? And I think I remember Krista being like, I thought we were joking. I hope we were joking. But everybody got their red shoes, their red heels, and we wore them out for a night. We looked like a bachelorette party, all because there's only so many outfits you can wear with red shoes. Like we all pretty much wear in black and white with bright red shoes, and hilarious. Like you feel kind of silly at first from being matchy with your friends, and then you're like, yeah, these are my friends. We're matching, and everyone knows we're together, and it was super fun. And then therefore they became like every year we would take our red shoes and wear them out, and several of the girls have gone through several red pairs of shoes. And when I wear them, I just always think of them. I call them my red friendship shoes. And when I stand on stage in them, I'm like, my girlfriends are with me. Like these have been blessed by them. The memories, my red shoes have seen love. And so when I wear them on stage, I always just feel like I have my girlfriends with me, which is always super special. So I don't have them on now. I have my slippers on. Joy to be in a pandemic. I don't even know if my heels will fit anymore after not putting them on for so many months, but I will see them fondly, and you can scroll back through my Instagram photos to see probably several different pictures of the red shoes showing up. So, it was so fun to be with all of you. I'm honored that you took the time and connected here in this way. And if you have other questions, throw them in there because this was fun. I might do another one. And I will try to get to some of the other questions that I didn't have time to get to in this one. So anyway, thank you so much. I love all of you. I really, really do. I feel so supported in this book launch. Thank you. It comes out in 4 weeks, and I don't feel like I'm doing it alone, which is the better way to go through life, is to feel supported by each other. And so I feel seen in a safe and satisfying way because of you. And I hope that my book and my words help you feel seen, and that it feels something you can rely on it and trust it and feel good about it. So that's my wish for all of us. Blessings on you.